think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
The courtroom felt like it might explode. Every seat was packed, people squeezed against the walls, all eyes locked on one woman, Whoopi Goldberg. But this wasn't the sharp-tongued star from TV anymore. This was a woman crushed by fear, sitting there like a shadow of herself. She wouldn't even lift her head. Her fingers clung to a pen like it was the only thing keeping her upright, though she hadn't written a single word. Her face was pale, her shoulders drooped. It was as if every regret she'd ever made had landed on her all at once. Then the doors flew open, and boom! The judge stormed in, slamming his gavel like a thunderclap from the sky. "Order in the court!" he barked, but the silence afterward, it was even louder than the shout. Everyone in that room could feel it. Something monumental was about to unfold. Karoline Leavitt sat across from Whoopi like a statue carved from steel. Her eyes didn't twitch. Her breath was steady. While chaos swirled around them, she remained still, anchored by truth and fire. Then, the judge leaned forward and spoke, and the moment shattered into legend. "Whoopi Goldberg is hereby sentenced in this defamation case," he declared. The room gasped so loudly it felt like the walls shook. Whoopi's eyes went wide in pure panic. Her jaw dropped, but no sound came out. She looked paralyzed, like lightning had struck her soul. Time stopped, and so did she. This was the same lawsuit she once mocked, the same case she waved off with a smirk. But now, it had slammed back with the force of a wrecking ball. All the jokes and smug laughter had turned into dust. Karoline didn't even flinch. Not a smile, not a nod. She didn't need to celebrate. The truth was doing it for her. Her silence echoed louder than a standing ovation. And then came the avalanche. The judge started reading through damning evidence, emails, memos, private directives, each word slicing the air like a knife. But nothing compared to what came next. The courtroom froze as the judge read aloud a message from ABC News President Kim Godwin. Effective immediately, Whoopi Goldberg is suspended. The room exploded in noise and disbelief.
ABC News President Kim Godwin saying in a statement, "Effective immediately, I am suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comments. While Whoopi has apologized, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments."
You know, when you're a certain age, you use words that you know from when you were a kid or you remember saying, and that's what I did today, and I shouldn't have. I should have thought about it a little longer before I said it, but I didn't.
Every word sliced deeper into Whoopi's already crumbling image. Her reputation wasn't just bruised, it was bleeding in front of everyone. One producer had written, "Let Whoopi lead. Her words will trend." It wasn't just a morning talk show anymore. It was a media missile launched straight at one woman's name. Then came the moment that made jaws drop. A flash drive was slid across the courtroom table like a weapon. The judge took it, inserted it, and suddenly the courtroom screen lit up with fire. Emails, video clips, private notes. The raw, unfiltered truth beamed out in high definition, and it couldn't be ignored. The contents were brutal. One message read, "Push her on age." Another ordered, "Let Whoopi strike first." It was all planned in cold blood. This wasn't journalism, it was an ambush.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here. Oh, yeah. Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah. I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
The gallery erupted into a frenzy. Reporters hammered away at their keyboards like their lives depended on it. Phones lit up with headlines that spread like wildfire. Breaking: Whoopi collapses in court. The news wasn't waiting. It was writing itself, live and unfiltered. This wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It had become a public reckoning. And Whoopi, she had nothing left to say. No punchlines, no clever retorts, just raw silence and crushing regret. Then came another bombshell from the judge. He read aloud, "We can count on Whoopi to trigger her." The scheme was right there, out in the open, and the world was watching every second of it unfold. Whoopi buried her face in her hands, her expression twisted under the weight of humiliation. The crown she once wore as a media queen had shattered, replaced by a cloak of shame. ABC's spin machine couldn't keep up. Cameras kept rolling. Journalists were shouting. The story had slipped from their grip, and now it had a life of its own. Even her legal team looked like ghosts of themselves, flipping papers that meant nothing, whispering plans that led nowhere. No one was coming to save her. Then, another gut punch. A screenshot from a Slack channel appeared on the screen. It read, "She'll crack. Trust Whoopi." It was all there, clear, calculated, cruel. The judge called for a recess, but Whoopi didn't budge. She sat frozen in place, trapped in the rubble of her own downfall. Outside the courthouse, chaos surged. Protesters packed the streets, holding signs high. Karoline's supporters were everywhere, chanting her name with thunderous voices. "Justice for Leavitt," they roared. A security officer leaned in close to Whoopi. "Would you like to step outside?" he asked gently. Her lips barely moved as she whispered, "No, I didn't think it would come to this." But it had. And it came like a tidal wave crashing down without mercy. Karoline didn't flinch, didn't celebrate. She just sat there, calm and unshaken, like a warrior who knew her truth had already won.
The most divisive and disgusting speech that any president, certainly in my lifetime, has ever given. He essentially waged war on half of the country by saying that we are all a threat to democracy because we believe in putting America first. It's not radical to want to put your country and your own people first. It's not radical to want to have a strong border, a strong military, and to unleash the might of your own economy, not economies around the world.
The media storm didn't just arrive, it detonated like a bomb. Headlines blared across every screen. Goldberg found guilty. Karoline Leavitt's victory goes viral. The world stopped to watch the unraveling, and nobody could look away. Inside ABC's high-rise offices, panic exploded behind closed doors. Phones wouldn't stop ringing. Lawyers scrambled in circles. Crisis managers rushed to contain the fire. But there was no putting this blaze out. A quiet voice from the shadows said it all. One insider whispered to a reporter, "This is the end of Whoopi's reign. We're not just losing a host, we're losing our credibility." And it didn't stop with Whoopi. The entire foundation of The View was shaking. Decades of daytime dominance were now being dismantled in front of millions. Even the staff couldn't hide their fear. Producers were wiping drives clean. Assistants sobbed in the hallways. Interns whispered about quitting before the flames reached their desks. Back in the courtroom, Whoopi sat in a silence louder than thunder. Her voice, once a daily roar on television, had withered into nothing but a whisper of shame. The tension in the room was suffocating. Not a soul moved. Whoopi didn't lift her head. She couldn't. She sat there crushed, smothered by the weight of the very words she once used to dominate the stage. Words that once made people laugh, now turned into daggers aimed straight back at her.
I respect everything everyone is saying to me, and I don't want to fake apologize. I'm very upset about that people are misunderstood what I was saying. I just leave. I go home. I go home to my life, and I take care of my cat and do all the stuff I'm supposed to.
Karoline's team sat like a wall of steel, solid, still, and completely focused. No one flinched. No one looked away. This wasn't a spectacle. This was about truth, about justice. And they had come locked and loaded for every second of it. The judge marched back into the room without an ounce of emotion. His stare was piercing, his voice like a blade. This court has reviewed the evidence, and it speaks for itself. Another thunderbolt cracked through the silence. Then came the statement that shattered the courtroom to its foundation. This was not a spontaneous incident. It was a coordinated attack rooted in corporate intent. The air felt like it shook with the force of those words. Suddenly, a new video began to play. The screen lit up with a backstage rehearsal. Clear footage of producers coaching Whoopi to go hard on Karoline. Another wave of gasps rolled through the gallery. There was no denying it now. The plan was clear, calculated, and cruel. This wasn't just bias. It was a media takedown scripted from the top. Whoopi stared at the footage with vacant, watery eyes. That commanding voice that once owned the airwaves was now silent, drowned out by her own betrayal on screen. Karoline didn't even blink at the video. She didn't need to. She had already lived this nightmare. Now the world was finally seeing the truth she had carried alone for far too long.
I don't care if he's pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence together. Show me he can't do the job, and then I'll say, okay, maybe it's time to go.
President Trump's life echoed the sentiment that President Trump is a threat to democracy. And if you're a deranged lunatic and you're mentally ill, you will believe that lie. And yes, you will take political violence like we have seen in 2 instances against President Trump. Last week, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris said that everyone who showed up to President Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden was a Nazi. That's despicable, dangerous, divisive rhetoric that is spewed by the Democrat Party every single day.
Whoopi's lawyer jumped up, desperate to cut in, but the judge lifted his hand like a sword. No more spin. No more evasion. The facts are clear. His words thundered across the courtroom like a cannon blast. Even the court reporter froze for a heartbeat, stunned by the power in the judge's voice. This wasn't just a ruling. It was a seismic shift in media history. Outside, the chants roared even louder. "Stand with Karoline," echoed through the plaza like a battle cry. People flooded the area, waving signs, raising flags, and recording every moment like witnesses to history. Social media couldn't keep up. Karoline's calm, steady presence had gone viral in real time. Every glance, every turn of a page, it was being replayed around the world like an anthem of resilience. One TikTok had already exploded past 30 million views. The clip? Karoline flipping through evidence while Whoopi visibly trembled beside her. The contrast was jaw-dropping, like a movie scene too raw to be scripted. Back inside ABC headquarters, panic was total. The legal department was in full-blown crisis mode. Executives barked into speakerphones. Terminate contracts, assess liabilities, damage control now. The house was on fire. Meanwhile, Whoopi's public image was burning down in real time. Once adored by millions, her fan base had fractured overnight, shattered by truth and betrayal. "I defended her for years," one betrayed viewer posted. "Now I see what she really stood for. I feel duped." It wasn't just a scandal, it was a collapse that no spin could salvage. The judge turned slowly toward Whoopi, eyes sharp as blades. "The platform you were given came with responsibility, but you used it to humiliate, to target, to destroy. That ends today." Whoopi's lip trembled. She reached out, then dropped her hand in defeat. She looked like a statue melting under the heat of her own consequences. Then came the final blow. The verdict that would echo for generations. This court finds Whoopi Goldberg guilty of defamation and awards Karoline Leavitt $800 million in damages. The room erupted in gasps. The number was colossal. It wasn't just compensation. It was a message to every media outlet in the world. Whoopi's face twisted in pure disbelief. Her lips moved, but no sound followed. Her voice, the very weapon she once wielded, was gone, silenced by the truth she could no longer outrun.
I respect everything everyone is saying to me, and I don't want to fake apologize. I'm very upset that people are misunderstood what I was saying.
Whoopi buried her face in her hands, rocking slightly, as if she could somehow disappear from the world watching her collapse in real time. But there was no hiding now. Not from the cameras, not from the truth, not from the fall. Karoline's lawyer rose like a force of justice. His voice rang out strong and clear. "This was never about money," he declared. "This was about clearing her name. And now, the world finally sees the truth." Then, boom! He held up a printed email for all to see, its message seared into bold black letters. "Exploit her youth. Make her stumble. One sentence. One weapon." And it spoke volumes about the cold, calculated cruelty they'd just exposed. Cameras clicked like machine guns, firing nonstop. The courtroom lit up like a movie premiere. But there were no gowns here, no smiles. Only shame, scandal, and raw exposure. The judge slowly closed the thick folder in front of him, his face firm and unmoved. "Court adjourned," he said, his voice like steel. "Justice has been served." Then, slam. The gavel struck wood for the last time, shaking the room one final time. The crowd stirred like a rising wave. Reporters bolted for the exits. Outside, satellite trucks waited like wolves. The story wasn't ending. It was exploding into every screen and headline across the globe.
ABC News President Kim Godwin saying in a statement, effective immediately, I am suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comments. While Whoopi has apologized, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments.
Karoline rose from her seat with quiet strength. No smile, no tears, just steady resolve. She didn't need to celebrate. She had endured the fire and emerged forged in steel. She turned toward her legal team, gave a single nod. And with silent unity, they walked toward the exit. Not with swagger, but with purpose. Every step was measured, grounded in truth. Behind her, Whoopi remained completely still. Her lawyer hovered, whispering rapidly. But she didn't react. She looked like royalty dethroned. Stripped of power, stripped of control, with nowhere left to run. Security approached gently and guided Whoopi to her feet. But she didn't walk. She wavered. Her body slumped, her hands limp, her face soaked with tears. This wasn't just a courtroom defeat. It was the fall of a media empire, shaken from its very roots. As she staggered past the press line, reporters leaned in, but Whoopi said nothing. Not a word, no defense, no apology. Just a hollow stare lost in the chaos she once commanded. Outside, the crowd made way like parting waters, some stunned, others cheering. And then came the chants, loud and undeniable. Karoline, Karoline. The voices echoed off the courthouse like thunder. Justice wasn't quiet anymore. Then Karoline stepped into the light. No speeches, no raised fists, just presence. The kind of presence only someone who survived the storm could carry. Strong, composed, unshaken.
Everybody makes the choice in life. If I have to be concerned that you are upset with me, you're thinking, oh, you and I have a connection. You don't realize there are 10,000 other people who are yelling the same stuff at me.
A reporter leaned forward, microphone raised, the world hanging on the edge of the next sentence. Karoline looked straight ahead and said only 5 words. Let this be a reminder. And with that, she rewrote the story of a generation. The crowd exploded into cheers. Applause roared through the air like fireworks. Hashtags surged across every screen. Let this be a reminder. Justice served. Truth over fame. Her words weren't just heard. They were immortalized in the digital sky. Across the country, anchors scrambled to explain it all, but they couldn't. This wasn't just news. It was raw, real, and too massive to fit into a headline. At ABC headquarters, chaos ruled. Doors slammed shut. Security access was revoked. Executives panicked. Meetings were canceled, and lawyers filled the halls like storm clouds. The network wasn't just in trouble, it was imploding from within. One executive shouted in panic, "She's finished! We can't spin this. It's over." Another, pale with dread, whispered, "And we might be next." Leaks hit the internet within minutes. Internal emails revealed the unraveling in real time. One cold message read, "Terminate all ties with Goldberg effective immediately." Damage control had begun, but the brand was already in flames. Sponsors bolted like rats fleeing a sinking ship. One by one, they dropped public statements condemning reckless behavior and unethical media practices revealed in court. Whoopi's face vanished from ABC's website. Talk show promos were yanked without a trace. Her name, once everywhere, became a ghost, scrubbed by the same machine that once lifted her high. Meanwhile, offers flooded in for Karoline. Book deals, documentary features, invitations to speak at major legal conferences. Political groups wanted her voice, her truth. But she didn't rush to grab the spotlight. She moved with quiet wisdom, graceful, measured, powerful. While the world shouted, she chose silence, and that silence spoke louder than any scream. Back in her hometown, church bells rang in celebration. Neighbors waved homemade signs that read, "Truth won today." The front page of the local paper called it, "The victory heard around the world." Inside the empty courtroom, janitors quietly swept the floor where history had been made. One paused, broom in hand, and said, "I'll never forget what I saw here today, because this wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. A legend fell. A truth teller rose, and the world watched as justice thundered through the silence."